The series begins with a girl named Hannah who tells us she's going to share the story of her life. At her school, Hannah's locker is covered with condolence notes and cards because she committed suicide. There's a boy at the school named Clay who is standing sadly near her locker, reminiscing about the times when Hannah was alive. He observes girls taking selfies in front of Hannah's locker. Justin, another student, approaches Clay and talks to him rudely, as if Clay committed a crime, until a teacher intervenes and asks them to return to their classes. In class, the students are distracted, exchanging pictures related to Hannah, revealing that the entire school is affected and saddened by her death, which occurred a week ago. Clay looks at the seat where Hannah used to sit and remembers complimenting her on her new hairstyle until the teacher brings him back to the present to focus on the lesson. Hannah's parents arrive at the school, where the principal shows them the tribute the students have made at her locker. Hannah's mother, visibly distressed with dark circles under her eyes, grieves for her daughter. The principal opens the locker and hands over Hannah's belongings to her parents. Clay sees this and, distressed, enters the school bathroom where he finds a student named Tyler secretly taking pictures of other students without permission. Bryce, a basketball team member, catches Tyler and scolds him, forcing him out of the bathroom. Upon leaving school, Clay is greeted by his classmate Courtney, who tells him they should be there for each other during such sad times. They both express confusion over why Hannah took her own life. Clay's best friend Tony arrives with his car and they leave together. In the car, Clay notices cassette tapes and Tony plays one, which contains music. Clay recalls working at a cinema's concession stand, where Hannah, who had moved to town 2 months prior and was new to the job, trained him. She was still making friends in the new city at that time. Returning home, Clay finds a package at his doorstep with his name on it. Inside, he discovers a box of numbered cassette tapes. Puzzled, he borrows a cassette player from his father, as they are outdated. When Clay plays tape 1, he hears Hannah's voice, revealing that she recorded these tapes before her suicide, explaining the reasons behind her decision. She mentions that if someone is listening to the tapes, they played a role in her suicide. Clay is shocked and frightened by this revelation. His mother touches his shoulder to get his attention and asks what he is listening to. Clay lies, saying it's a recorded history lesson from school. His mother senses his behavior is influenced by Hannah's situation. Clay tells her he wasn't very close to Hannah, then takes the cassette player to his room. In his hurry, the player falls and stops working properly. Clay tells his parents he's going to meet Tony and leaves with the tape. Clay rides his bike through the city until he reaches Tony's house, where he sees Tony fixing a car with his father. Clay helps them and starts the car's engine. While in the car, Clay notices an old device called a Walkman, a vintage cassette player that operates on batteries. Clay stealthily takes the Walkman and leaves after lying to Tony about having an emergency. Clay goes to a secluded spot overlooking a river to listen to the recordings. Hannah explains the rules in the recordings. Rule 1 is to listen carefully to what she says. Rule 2 is to rewind the tape after listening and then pass the tapes to the next person she mentions. She also notes that there's a map in the box for places she talks about. Clay hears Hannah say she has kept a copy of the tapes with someone trustworthy in case the current listener doesn't pass them on. Confused and unsure why he received the tapes, as he believes he never harmed Hannah, Clay gets distracted and crashes his bike into a car, injuring his face. Despite being wounded and bleeding, he plays the device and listens to Hannah instructing him to do as she said and warning him that he is being watched. Clay returns home and lies to his mother about his injury, claiming it was caused by a tree branch. His mother insists he wear a helmet while biking to prevent further injuries. Holding the helmet, Clay reminisces about a time when Hannah complimented him on it. When Clay enters the cinema to start his work, Hannah invites him to a party at her house and gives him the address. Back in the present, Clay listens to the tape and goes to the location Hannah mentions on the map. He notices a car following him and, feeling scared and aware that he is being watched, Clay diverts from the road to avoid the car and heads to Hannah's house. He recalls attending Hannah's party in the past. In the tape, Hannah reveals that the first tape subject is Tyler, who was one of the reasons for her suicide. At the party, Hannah welcomes him, and her friend Kat, whom Clay seems to have a crush on, encourages him to drink alcohol despite his dislike for it. Tyler, who is filming the party events, captures them. Bryce enters and comments on Hannah's appearance, but Kat intervenes, sending Bryce to empty the alcohol barrels. Kat warns Hannah about Bryce, describing him as unstable and reckless, a sentiment sentiment Clay agrees with. Kat notices Clay's interest in Hannah, but observes that he is too afraid to express his feelings, considering himself just an ordinary and boring person. The three of them leave the house and see Justin joking violently with his friend, Zach. She makes them stop joking with each other because they are annoying each other. Hannah sees Justin smiling at her and says in the recordings that this is the first time the problem started to appear. Then Kat moved from the city with her family and left Hannah alone because she was her only friend. At that time, Hannah had a crush on Justin, and they would talk and joke with each other before school. And when Hannah went to her house, she would call Kat, who knows that Hannah likes Justin. And Kat tells her that Hannah can take Justin even though Kat liked him. And at school, Hannah makes a copy of the class schedule, Justin, in order to know his movements and know how to meet him. And she waits for him after his class is not over, and she fumbles with him intentionally and acts as if this is a coincidence. And she knows how to talk to him for a while and tells him that she will see him again. Hannah begins to love basketball because of Justin, who is a member of the school basketball team. She watches him during his matches. She sees Clay in the stands and makes him sit next to her and considers him a friend of hers like her brother. Clay notices that the reason Hannah's presence is Justin's. After school, Justin sees Hannah with Clay, and they are walking together. When Justin offers to give her a ride in Arabic, Hannah tells him that she will take the school bus. Justin looks at Clay and knows that Clay will be an obstacle on his way to Hannah, and Justin gets out of Zach's car and gets on the bus to be with Hannah. She lets him sit next to her, and they talk and joke with each other. Hannah changes her mobile number and gets off the bus too. She plays a difficult role for Justin. When Hannah is at home and doing her school homework, Justin sends her messages, and Hannah prefers to reply to him, so her mother takes her mobile phone so she can focus on her homework, and she answers Justin's call and tells him that her daughter is busy doing her homework, and he lies. Justin comes to her and tells her that he is also doing his homework and needs to talk to Hannah. The mother knows that they are lying, but she gives the mobile phone to her daughter because she knows the movements of the teenagers. The two talk to each other and agree that they will meet in half an hour, and when they meet, they play with each other in the garden. In the present, Clay is in the park and listens to recordings of Hannah telling her story and imagines what the scene looked like. In the past, Hannah and Justin are together. Hannah is sliding on the slide and Justin is filming her from under the pocket, and she didn't care, but Hannah no longer has any background on what Justin did. And in the present, Tony arrives at the park and sees Clay and is concerned about his Walkman. However, he lets Clay keep it and take his mind off the road while he listens to the recordings and does not have another accident, and it turns out that Tony is the one who he is watching Clay, but Clay still does not understand this until Tony tells him the name of the tape that Clay is listening to and tells him that he is listening to the second part of the cassette tape that contains the second part. Clay is surprised after he realizes that, Tony, I know the subject of the conditions. In Clay's bedroom, he listens to the tape before he sleeps and hears Hannah's voice as she thanks Justin for her first kiss in the garden. But what happened after the kiss was not very pleasant. On the second day of school, Justin talks to Zach about a case that is not yet known. Clay goes back to the past and remembers when Justin showed the picture he took from under Hannah's pocket to his friends at school, and Justin continues to laugh and be proud. He was very serious about what he did, but Bryce takes the mobile phone from him and posts the picture in the school. And in the classroom, Hannah sees the students working on something on their mobile phones. So Hannah becomes worried and notices that all the students receive the same picture, and the one among them is Clay. And Hannah is shocked when she finds out what she is sending to her colleagues. In the present, Clay hears the tape in which Hannah says that she is not upset with Justin, but she is upset with herself because she trusted him from the beginning. And Clay remains fanatical and tells Tony how he knows how to cope with everything that it happens. And Clay knows that Tony doesn't remember the tapes, and Clay keeps asking him a lot of questions. But all Tony says to Clay is that he listens to the tapes until the end, and if Clay doesn't hear all the tapes, something will happen, worse than what happened to Hannah. And Clay returns to the past while he is in the school cafeteria, and Hannah sits next to him and talks to him as if he were her close friend, but he remains afraid of his appearance in front of the rest of the students because he is sitting with one person and the whole school is talking about her and bad things. So Hannah understands why Clay behaves like this kiss with her, and she tells him that he hurts her feelings very much, and she stays away from him. In the present, when Clay hears the tape while he is at school, he sees Justin coming out of the principal's room, and he looks like he is in big trouble. Justin looks at the school's hallway and sees the ghost of Hannah smiling at him, and at night, he turns the tape sideways. The second one continues listening to the recordings. As Clay listens to the recordings, he reflects on his past experiences with Hannah at school. He remembers watching her being teased and harassed by other students, and how he too laughed at her distress. He also recalls the time when Hannah quit her job at the cinema after returning her work uniform. Throughout the night, unable to sleep, Clay continues to think about the recordings. Even in the bathroom, he is haunted by the memory of Hannah's suicide in the bathtub. He feels as though Tony is still watching him. At school, Clay is terrified when he learns from the tapes that one day everyone will know he was one of the reasons for Hannah's suicide, and that people will look at him differently. He begins to distrust Tony, even though Tony is his close friend. When Clay goes to the basketball court to inquire about Justin, he finds out that Justin hasn't been to school for 2 days. On the other side of tape 1, Hannah speaks about her old friend Jessica, who is also one of the 13 reasons for her decision. Meanwhile, a worried Jessica inquires about Justin's whereabouts, and nobody knows where he is. She looks at Clay and asks what he is listening to, referring to the tapes she has heard herself, but a teacher interrupts and asks her to leave the classroom. After class, Clay's friend Sherry walks with him and checks on his well-being. She mentions that Jessica, a cheerleader who cheers for Justin during games, is worried about him. Sherry reveals that she used to be friends with Hannah but had a falling out. She also tells Clay that Hannah really liked him. In the tape, Hannah recounts her first meeting with Jessica in the previous principal's office. Initially, they disliked each other and treated each other rudely. As Clay listens to the recording, he smiles, remembering his days with Hannah. Suddenly, the basketball team bullies him, causing him to fall and drop the Walkman. The principal picks it up, surprised that someone still uses a Walkman, and asks to talk to Clay about Hannah. In the past, Hannah and Jessica's friendship blossoms as they frequent a cafe and bond over cocoa, which becomes a symbol of their friendship. They share their past experiences and gradually become close friends, thankful to the principal for introducing them. In the present, Clay sees Jessica and asks why she always hides when she sees the principal and if he has heard the tapes. Jessica tells him to lower his voice and not to believe everything he hears. Clay remembers how Jessica used to always hang out with Hannah. Once at the cafe, they notice a boy watching them. The girls approach him and ask whom he was looking at. They get to know him as Alex, a new student in town without friends, who always sits alone. They decide to include him in their group, and the three become inseparable best friends. In the present, Clay is summoned to the student affairs office at school. When he arrives, he receives a daily report that must be signed by all his teachers to ensure he is regularly attending classes. It's strange because Clay is already punctual in attendance, but it seems someone wants to make sure he continues to be. Clay sees Alex there and asks how he is doing, but Alex refuses to talk to him and leaves. In the past, the trio of friends, Clay, Hannah, and Jessica, would often hang out together after school at a cafe. They would talk about their day and chat for hours. It turns out that Alex's father is a civil officer and Jessica's father is a military officer. Hannah is very happy to have friends she can trust and who don't leave her alone. However, over time, Alex starts hanging out with another group and his relationship with Hannah and Jessica changes. Eventually, Jessica also stops sitting with Hannah at the cafe, leaving Hannah alone again. One day, Hannah sees Alex and Jessica sitting together, holding hands, indicating they are in a relationship. Clay remembers a time when he was with Hannah during a break at work. Hannah asks him if she could ever be as beautiful as Jessica. Surprised, Clay tells her she is unique, but Hannah is upset by his response, and Clay is confused as to why. On another day at the cinema, Hannah is at the ticket counter when Jessica comes to buy a ticket. Hannah lets her in for free because they are friends. When Alex appears, he and Jessica admit to Hannah that they are dating. Hannah is upset and asks Alex to pay for his ticket, treating him like a stranger. At school, Sherry and Jessica perform in a cheerleading show, impressing the students with their cheering and dancing. The basketball team captain, Bryce, announces the team members, including Justin. When it's Jessica's turn to perform a special cheer for Justin, he is still missing and no one knows where he is. Clay sees Jessica leaving the gym in tears and follows her. Jessica is upset and tells Clay to leave her alone. After school, Clay prepares to ride his bike home when Zach, accompanied by by his friend Marcus in a car, invites Clay to Bryce's house. Clay is surprised, as these were the boys who had bullied him, and their sudden change of attitude is unexpected. Suddenly, Tony appears in his car and intervenes, making Zach leave Clay alone. However, Clay still doesn't trust Tony and doesn't thank him, choosing to walk away instead. On his way home, Clay passes by the cafe and sees Jessica sitting there alone. He reflects on a past moment when Jessica was going through a tough time, sitting with Hannah in the cafe. Rumors had spread about Hannah being in a relationship with Alex, causing Jessica to be upset. Hannah tries to defend herself, insisting that nothing happened between her and Alex despite their close relationship. It turns out Alex lied to Jessica, forging a note in Hannah's handwriting as if Hannah was trying to win him over. Jessica believes the lie, insults Hannah, slaps her across the face, and leaves. In the present, Clay enters the cafe and sits with Jessica, questioning her about her actions towards Hannah. Jessica tells him not to believe everything he heard in the tapes because it was Hannah who stopped showing up at the cafe, not Jessica or Alex. Clay is puzzled as to why Hannah would lie in her suicide messages. He asks Jessica why Zach and Marcus suddenly want to befriend him, to which she responds that they were never and will never be his friends, suggesting it's a trap. At Bryce's luxurious house, Justin is staying there, playing PlayStation and using drugs to forget the trouble he's involved in. His friends tell him he needs to snap out of it and contact Jessica, who is worried about him. However, Justin is indifferent and content with his current situation. Tony visits Clay at the cafe and asks why he is taking so long to listen to the tapes. Clay finds it psychologically challenging to listen to the recordings of a deceased girl he constantly thinks about. At Bryce's house, Jessica knocks on the door while Justin is using drugs. They argue because Justin has been ignoring her and not attending games, risking losing his college scholarship. Jessica calms down, and Justin asks her which tape Clay has reached. She tells him that Clay is still at the beginning and has a long way to go. Jessica questions why Justin is hiding at Bryce's house if Hannah was lying, but Justin doesn't respond. Hannah's mother is in her daughter's room and finds a list of girls' names from the school, each with a body part highlighted that attracts boys. Alarmed, she talks to her husband and realizes her daughter was a victim of bullying. She decides to call Tony to show him the list and ask him questions about it. Tony, who has a connection with Hannah's parents, agrees to come over immediately to answer their questions. Clay sees Tony and follows him on his bike, realizing Tony's involvement with Hannah's parents. This deepens Clay's suspicions about Tony. The next day, Jessica visits Justin's parents' house and meets his mother, who is a drug addict. Justin's mother's boyfriend appears and harshly tells Jessica that her presence is causing his mother distress and suggests that it's better for Justin not to come home that day. Meanwhile, at Bryce's house, Bryce wakes Justin up and questions why he didn't return home as they had agreed. Justin makes excuses, saying he doesn't want to go back because of his mother's mentally unstable boyfriend. Bryce reassures Justin that if he's involved in anything mentioned in Hannah's tapes, he will help him because they are friends and always look out for each other. Bryce also advises Justin to treat Jessica better since she's his girlfriend. At school, Clay starts feeling paranoid, thinking everyone is against him because of the tapes. While he's lost in thought, Marcus approaches him and encourages him to help hang posters for a campaign supporting those with depression and preventing suicide. At the same moment, they hear the school music band preparing to play in the courtyard, aiming to spread some joy among students affected by Hannah's death. It turns out that Alex, a member of the music band and the subject of one of the tapes, is getting ready to play the guitar. His bandmate jokingly comments that Alex's song is depressing and suicidal, which affects Alex, reminding him of Hannah's fate. Clay confronts Alex with the tapes, questioning if Hannah is telling the truth or lying, as Jessica claimed. However, Alex doesn't respond and returns to the band to start playing. In the tape, Hannah talks about a time when she and Jessica were in the student affairs office at school. Jessica is depressed and not sharing what's bothering her. Alex enters, and Hannah suggests they meet at the cafe to reminisce about old times, but soon problems and arguments arise between Jessica and Alex. In the present, Hannah's mother appears in the principal's office and inquires about her daughter's experiences at school, wondering if Hannah suffered from bullying. The principal is reluctant to answer due to the ongoing lawsuit regarding Hannah's suicide, fearing anything he says could be used against him in court. Realizing the futility of the meeting, Hannah's mother breaks down and heads to the girls' bathroom, where she cries. She overhears two girls gossiping negatively about a classmate and realizes that her daughter was indeed a victim of bullying. Locked in a bathroom stall, she notices writings on the walls with messages targeting various girls, mentioning inappropriate inappropriate behaviors and scandals. Shocked, she takes photos of the writings to use in her lawsuit. Upon leaving the bathroom, she encounters Courtney in front of Hannah's locker, adorned with flowers and candles. Courtney claims many people miss Hannah, but Hannah's mother is unaffected, especially knowing it's all lies, evidenced by the presence of flowers, which Hannah disliked. She notes that anyone who truly knew Hannah would be aware of this. As the class ends and students leave their rooms, Clay sees Hannah's mother exiting the school gate, which prompts him to reminisce about walking with Hannah after school. Hannah kept asking him about Alex, but Clay's responses weren't helpful. He suggests they watch the lunar eclipse together that night after work, and Hannah, delighted, agrees with a smile. In the present, Sherry discusses Justin with Jessica, pondering how to get him to return to school. When Sherry sees a poster about a costume contest with a 200 prize for the best costume, she shares the idea with Jessica, who likes it, and sends a photo of the poster to Justin. At the principal's office, Counselor Mr. Porter talks to the principal about the school's stance on Hannah's mother's lawsuit. They discuss Hannah's alleged relationship with Justin in the park, which Justin denies. The problem is, Mr. Porter can't reach Justin for questioning because Justin hasn't been attending school, partly due to family issues with his mother causing him psychological harm. Jessica arrives at Bryce's house and finds Justin crying over his involvement in problems. She tries to comfort him with a hug. Meanwhile, Mr. Porter continues discussing the lawsuit with the principal, concerned it could cost the school thousands of dollars and damage its reputation. He mentions a meeting he had with Hannah a year ago about her college choices and blames himself for not realizing she needed help. Mr. Porter feels guilty and saddened by his failure, contemplating a document from his desk drawer. In a classroom, the teacher plays a World War II documentary and falls asleep. Clay seizes the opportunity to leave and asks Sherry to cover for him if the teacher wakes up. He sees Alex cutting down posters on the school walls, frustrated with people's perception of suicide as a mere psychological illness that is easily treated. Alex admits that what Hannah said in the tapes is true and confesses his role in hurting her. Mr. Porter interrupts and asks Alex to come to his office. When Mr. Porter also asks Clay, Clay lies about being sent to the library by the teacher. After they leave, student Ryan stands in front of Hannah's locker, leaving a kind note, visibly affected by what happened to Hannah. In the past, while working at the cinema, Hannah sees Alex alone without Jessica, indicating there was a problem between them. Clay jokes with Hannah to make her laugh, and they go to the rooftop to watch a lunar eclipse. On another day at school, Clay observes boys taking pictures of Hannah as she walks, even following her into the girls' restroom. The girls refuse to interact with her, treating her as an outcast. In class, a list circulates among the students, detailing body parts that attract boys to various girls by name. Sherry shows the list to Hannah, and she is shocked to see what's being said about her. Upset and broken, Hannah throws the list in the trash while the students laugh and boys harass her after the class. In the library, Clay talks with a classmate, and their classmate Sky asks them to quiet down so she can focus on reading. Clay and Sky used to be close friends. Later, Clay finds Hannah sitting alone and joins her. Hannah shares her decision to attend a university in New York. When Clay brings up the list, he comments that it's good that boys find Hannah attractive, but Hannah sees it as an insult. In the present, during gym class, Clay talks to Tony about Hannah. Alex then approaches Clay, cautioning him not to talk to Tony about anything since Mr. Porter advised them not to. The two agree to meet at the cafe after school. Clay remembers a past incident when an enraged Hannah entered the boys' locker room and confronted Alex after learning he was responsible for creating the list that ruined her reputation. When she leaves, the boys applaud Alex as if he's a hero, believing he had a relationship with Hannah. In the present, after shopping, Justin and Jessica are outside a mall when their coach, who has been unable to reach Justin for days, spots them. Justin lies, saying he's been sick but will return to school the next day. The coach reminds Justin of the importance of attendance for his college scholarship. At the cafe, Clay finds Sky working as a barista. He orders coffee and compliments her tattoos, remembering their past conversations about them. Meanwhile, Mr. Porter holds a meeting with Courtney and Marcus in his office to find out who cut down the campaign posters at school. He questions them about Hannah and decides to investigate the matter himself. Returning to the cafe scene, Clay meets Alex, and they discuss Hannah. Both have developed a habit of drinking coffee due to their constant anxiety about Hannah. Alex reveals that he listened to all the tapes in one night and is surprised to learn Clay is still on the second tape. It becomes clear that Bryce initiated the list that led other boys, including Alex, to join in and vote on the girls. Alex joined to spite Jessica for not wanting to be in a relationship with him, not intending to hurt Hannah. He feels guilty that his actions contributed to Jessica Jessica breaking off her friendship with Hannah and believes that if Hannah had someone close to her, she might not have taken her life. Suddenly, Tony and Hannah's mother appear in the cafe and sit together, causing Alex to become agitated and leave. In the past, Hannah buys chocolate at a supermarket where Bryce sees her at the cashier and initially talks to her nicely before harassing her and leaving. Hannah is shocked and unable to react due to the trauma, eventually breaking down in tears over the students' perception of her as an easy target for harassment. In the present, Clay enters the same supermarket and coincidentally encounters Bryce, who persuades him to buy alcohol instead of soda and pays for it. Outside, Clay finds Justin and the group, including Bryce, Alex, and Zach, who challenge him to drink a bottle in 18 seconds. Tony observes from a distance. Clay throws the bottle away and confronts Tony, asking why he always follows him. Tony remains silent as Clay doesn't trust him and drives away. Clay follows Tony on his bike until he sees Tony with a gang beating someone up, leaving Clay unsure of the reason. Zach and Justin discuss wanting Clay on their side due to a scandal involving Bryce in the tapes. They believe Tony is trying to keep Clay away from Bryce so Clay can testify against Bryce when needed. When Clay returns home drunk, his parents notice his state and he apologizes before suddenly vomiting on the dining table. At Bryce's house, the boys play and joke around, but Zach is depressed and cries despite the playful atmosphere. Alex jumps into the pool to distract himself from thoughts about Hannah. Meanwhile, Clay is unable to sleep and continues listening to the rest of the tapes, taking the map with him as he leaves the house late at night. Clay listens to the fourth tape recorded by Hannah before her suicide, which contains the reasons that led to her decision. He goes to Tyler's house, known for the infamous window from which Tyler spied on others mentioned in the tapes. Clay throws a rock at Tyler's window in frustration and runs away. There, he encounters Marcus, who also has a tape but claims he hasn't listened to it and isn't interested in a dead girl's story. Clay continues the tape and learns that Hannah always felt like someone was watching her house, to the point where she was afraid to move in her bed, fearing she was being observed. Indeed, Tyler was the one spying on her and taking pictures, but his presence on her tapes is due to one specific photo. The next day, there's a parents' meeting at school to discuss warning signs of suicide, like isolation and depression. A parent asks if Hannah was bullied before her suicide. The principal denies any bullying at the school, but Hannah's mother, Olivia, intervenes, telling everyone that their children are responsible and that the school's bathroom walls reveal what was said about Hannah before her death, implicating the school in her suicide. Clay, present at the school, looks for Tyler to discuss what he heard on the tape, but can't find him. Later, Hannah and Courtney spend the night together, waiting for the person spying on Hannah to appear. They drink secretly and play truth or dare, leading to Courtney daring Hannah to kiss her. Unfortunately, Tyler is watching and takes a photo at that moment. Realizing Tyler is the voyeur, Hannah confronts him the next day to get the photo, confirming it's the only copy. Tyler asks Hannah out, but she rejects him and leaves. Embarrassed by her reaction, Tyler decides to take revenge by spreading the photo, exposing Courtney's real sexual orientation, which she had been hiding. Courtney blames Hannah for her public exposure and decides to cut ties with her. Back in the present, Clay listens to the tape in Hannah's room and receives a message from Marcus inviting him to a party to burn the tapes. Clay gathers the tapes but finds Tony having dinner with his family downstairs. After dinner, Tony drives Clay home and explains that the person he and his brothers beat up had harassed his sister. Tony advises Clay not to go to Bryce's house or destroy the tapes and to listen to all of them, revealing he has a copy and has listened to them all. Tony plays Hannah's voice from his car's cassette player to prove he has the tapes. Clay returns home and places the tapes back on his desk. Afterwards, Clay goes to the school assembly for Halloween, where he finds Marcus convincing him to destroy the tapes, arguing that Hannah is dead and there's no need to listen to a deceased person's confessions. Clay leaves the school on his bike, feeling overwhelmed by nightfall. He finds children throwing toilet paper at Hannah's house and chases them away. He then encounters Hannah's mother, Olivia, and explains that he knew Hannah and worked with her. Clay imagines Olivia choking him, blaming him for Hannah's death, but excuses himself to the bathroom to escape these thoughts. Back in the present, Clay continues listening to the fourth tape outside Tyler's window, imagining Hannah telling Tyler that when everyone hears the tape, they will break his window. However, Clay is the only one who doesn't break it. Instead, he photographs Tyler changing and exposes him by sending the picture to the entire school, just as Tyler did to Hannah. Justin realizes Clay won't stop seeking revenge for Hannah, which could cause problems for them. When Tony receives leaves the picture, he confronts Clay, who claims he's seeking justice. Clay then starts listening to the fifth tape, centered around Courtney. He coincidentally sees her in the cafe with her family, nervously talking in a school group chat where everyone involved in Hannah's tapes is afraid of Clay seeking revenge. Courtney becomes tense upon seeing Clay and leaves for school. At school, Tyler faces ridicule because of the anonymously distributed picture. He confronts Clay, asking what he gained from his actions, and Clay explains he's trying to respond to what they did to Hannah before her suicide. Justin warns Clay to stop his actions, fearing they will bring down the entire school community. Clay disregards the warning and leaves for his clash. Tyler faces bullying due to the photo and goes to Mr. Kevin, the school counselor, who appears indifferent and doesn't offer genuine help. Tyler expresses his frustration, feeling victimized like Hannah, and leaves Kevin's office. He finds Courtney discussing with Marcus and Jessica about what Clay might do if he listens to the rest of the tapes. Tyler expresses his desire to join their plan against Clay, but Zach threatens him, showing they don't trust Tyler. Courtney reflects on how Hannah tried to reassure her after their photo was spread, despite Courtney wanting to distance herself from Hannah. After much persuasion, Hannah convinces Courtney to go with her to the school's Halloween party. Hannah tells her father she needs to rent a new car because none of her friends have a suitable one. Despite financial difficulties at their family pharmacy, her father arranges for her to have a new car for the night. They all attend the party happily, with Clay observing Hannah from a distance and waving to her. Jeff, Clay's friend, who had bet that if he passed a certain subject, he would make Clay attend the party, wins the bet. Jeff encourages Clay to ask Hannah to dance. Meanwhile, Courtney dances as her classmate, Monty, approaches her and claims to know that she and Hannah were the ones in the photo. To divert suspicion from herself, Courtney shares a secret with him. Monty then approaches Hannah and, upon her rejection, claims to know she was in the photo with a girl named Laura and accuses her of being promiscuous. Hannah is hurt by this, and the confrontation occurs in front of Clay. Hannah confronts Courtney about the things she said, questioning why Courtney would ruin her life just to save herself from a photo in which they weren't even recognizable. Hannah finds her friend Jessica drunk, takes her away from Justin, knowing he might take advantage of her, and tries to drive her home, but the car battery is dead. Tony arrives and helps start the car. Clay listens to Hannah's tape detailing these events. Afterward, he meets Courtney after school and takes her to Hannah's grave, accusing her of contributing to Hannah's death by ruining her reputation and calling her cheap, all to hide her own truth. Unable to handle Clay's accusations, Courtney leaves. Tony, who had been following them, sits with Clay and brings his bike, anticipating that Courtney would leave. Clay returns home alone, but is soon intercepted by Justin and Zach in their car, who forcefully take him because they are afraid of his reaction to the remaining tapes. Alex drives the car recklessly to frighten Clay, attempting to deter him from taking further action or continuing to listen to the tapes. They are stopped by a traffic cop who turns out to be Alex's father. He warns Alex to drive properly and go straight home. Alex drops off his friends, and Clay listens to the song he danced to with Hannah at the party. Clay's mother enters his room and informs him that her law firm has been hired to defend the school against the lawsuit filed by the Bakers. She asks if Hannah was really bullied, but Clay says he didn't know her well enough to know what she went through. The next day, Alex crosses the street to school and narrowly avoids being hit by Monty's car. They fight in the street until the school counselor, Kevin, breaks it up and sends them to the school for an investigation. During this, Clay sits, thinking of Hannah, until his classmate Sherry greets him and asks for help with a challenging school assignment. They agree to study together in the library. Clay reminisces about filling out a love survey with Jeff, hoping to match with Hannah. The survey is designed to find 5 compatible partners for students based on their answers. Hannah also fills out the survey, hoping to match with Clay, but is disappointed when he doesn't appear in her results. While walking with Sherry, Hannah receives a call from Marcus, and Sherry suggests giving him a chance. Hannah agrees to consider going out with him. Meanwhile, a disciplinary council is held for Alex and Monty's fight. Clay, part of the committee, is distracted, thinking about when he lied to Hannah about not doing the survey, even though she was his top match. Jeff inadvertently reveals the truth in front of Hannah, leading her to call Marcus and agree to meet him, feeling let down by Clay's silence. Clay snaps out of his memories as the committee disciplines Monty with a 3-day suspension and gives Alex a warning. Marcus, also on the committee, waits for it to end and then advises Clay to dispose of the tapes and stop listening to them. Clay realizes that Marcus is also afraid of the tapes' contents and leaves. Hannah's parents are searching through her belongings for any evidence of bullying to present in their lawsuit against the school. They are devastated by her suicide. Meanwhile, Clay is studying at home with Sherry, but he is unable to get close to her due to his feelings for Hannah. Sherry confesses she's on Hannah's tapes and has done something terrible to her, urging Clay not to listen to all the tapes. Realizing Sherry's intent to either take the tapes or prevent him from listening to them, Clay asks her to leave. Clay continues listening to Marcus's tape, learning about their disastrous date at a diner. Marcus arrives late with his friends, acts polite initially, then tries to make unwanted advances towards Hannah. After she pushes him away, Marcus's true nature surfaces, and he leaves with his friends, abandoning a distraught Hannah. Zach then approaches her, offering comfort and paying for her drink before leaving. Expecting his own tape, Clay is surprised to find Zach's tape instead, detailing his actions towards Hannah. The next day, after Marcus's behavior, Zach approaches Hannah, claiming he wished she was on his list and expressing his attraction to her. Hannah, angered by his manner, loudly rejects him in front of the school, embarrassing Zach. Continuing Zach's tape, Clay learns about his mistreatment of Hannah. Clay attends a basketball game at school, noticing Zach's new car and watching the match. Marcus, afraid of Clay's possible actions, warns him not to do anything. Clay imagines confronting and hitting Zach, but snaps back to reality, merely watching Zach celebrate his team's victory, seemingly guilt-free over his role in Hannah's suicide. Clay recalls Zach's actions towards Hannah, where he would take any notes or flirtations directed at her in class, making her feel alone and unloved. Hannah realizes Zach is taking her notes and writes him an apology for yelling at him in front of the school. However, Zach discards the note, ignoring its content. Hannah confronts him, asking why he is treating her this way. Clay snaps out of his memories and hallucinates, seeing Hannah dead on the gym floor, causing him to scream for the game to stop. He realizes he's imagining and leaves the school, scratching, "Why me?" Hannah's words to Zach on Zach's car. The next day, Zach's mother confronts Clay about vandalizing the car. Inside Clay's house, Clay admits to the act, and Zach tries to prevent Clay from revealing the reason. Zach claims Hannah lied and still has the note she wrote, making Clay doubt Hannah's truthfulness. Clay's parents agree to pay for the car damage and ground Clay for 2 weeks, allowing him to leave only for school. Clay decides not to finish the tapes, believing Hannah fabricated stories, and gives them to Tony, refusing to listen further. At school, Clay greets everyone on Hannah's tapes, surprising them with his friendly demeanor. Mr. Porter requests Clay and Courtney to guide new students around the school. During the tour, Clay sarcastically comments on the school and introduces Justin and Zach as school royalty, confronting Justin about stealing his bike. Clay highlights Hannah's old locker, explaining that she committed suicide due to the school's cruel treatment. Justin tries to silence him, but Clay continues, accusing the school of covering up the truth. Clay is then summoned to Mr. Porter's office, leaving the group stunned. Clay visits Mr. Porter's office, where Mr. Porter asks him to share his feelings. Clay expresses frustration about everyone wanting to talk but not act, and leaves the office. Outside, Tony waits for Clay, wanting to show him something that will help him understand his interest in Hannah and her tapes. Meanwhile, Justin and his friends consider how to stop Clay from listening to the tapes, fearing exposure from Justin's tape. They gather in the auditorium, where Hannah once wandered among university representatives, feeling inadequate due to her low grades. Hannah attends a poetry seminar and encounters Ryan, the subject of tape 8. Hannah recalls Ryan previously publishing a survey about the most attractive girl in school without her permission, contributing to her bad reputation. Ryan visits Hannah's family's pharmacy to apologize and gifts her a notebook for writing poetry. Hannah attends another seminar with Ryan, where he encourages her to write about her feelings. She writes a deeply personal poem, which Ryan secretly takes from her notebook and publishes in his magazine, further damaging Hannah's reputation. At school, students speculate that Hannah wrote the poem, reinforcing their negative perception of her. When Hannah confronts Ryan, he insists she'll eventually thank him for sharing her talent. This betrayal devastates Hannah, as she feels betrayed every time she trusts someone. Back in the present, Clay is conflicted about continuing the tapes after learning more about Hannah's experiences and the actions of their peers. Clay joins Tony in a challenging mountain climb, reaching the summit with difficulty. They talk extensively, eventually discussing Hannah. Clay asks Tony if he has ever seen a crime scene or a dead body, to which Tony reveals he saw someone who had committed suicide being taken to an ambulance. Clay realizes Tony is referring to Hannah. Tony shares that on the day of Hannah's suicide, she left the tapes at his door without knocking. He saw her from his window but didn't go to her. After listening to the first tape, Tony rushed to Hannah's house, but it was too late. She was already being taken away in a body bag. Feeling responsible as Hannah entrusted him with the the tapes, Tony wanted everyone involved to hear them and understand their impact on Hannah. After returning to the car, Tony urges Clay to take back the tapes and finish listening to them. He hands them to Clay, who promptly listens to them upon returning home. Clay then finds the magazine containing Hannah's published poem and takes it to give to her mother, Olivia, hoping it will help her understand Hannah's feelings. Clay visits Jessica, Hannah's friend, to inquire about the night of the party. Hannah had hinted at an incident she was reluctant to discuss because she might have been too intoxicated to remember. However, Hannah was a witness to what happened to Jessica. Jessica evades Clay and leaves with Justin for their class. Hannah's father visits Mr. Porter at the school, complaining that the school made light of Hannah's poem instead of identifying and helping her. Mr. Porter dismisses the concerns, suggesting many students could have written similar poems without resorting to suicide. Frustrated, Hannah's father leaves, criticizing Mr. Porter's apathy. Clay encounters Marcus, who again warns him to stop listening to the tapes or face harm. Unfazed, Clay dismisses the threats. Later, Marcus plants drugs in Clay's backpack and reports him to Mr. Porter, leading to Clay's suspension and a police referral for a drug program. Clay insists to his mother he is not involved with drugs and shares his close friendship with Hannah, expressing his deep sadness over her loss. He refuses to enroll in the drug program, maintaining his innocence. Hannah recalls being at Jessica's party, where she hid in a room as Jessica and her boyfriend, Justin, entered. Hannah hid behind the curtains and then in the closet, witnessing Bryce sexually assaulting an intoxicated and unconscious Jessica. Traumatized and unable to intervene or save her friend, Hannah left the room in shock, seeing Justin outside, crying. Clay confronts Justin, accusing him of knowing about the assault and keeping silent. Justin tries to deny it, but Clay insists that he could have reported it earlier if Hannah, the only witness, hadn't died. Justin ultimately asks Clay to leave and offers him his stolen bike, which Clay takes to Tony. He questions Tony about remaining silent after hearing the tapes, and Tony advises Clay to listen to all of them first to understand the complete story. Clay then starts listening to the 10th tape. In the tape, Hannah continues her story after leaving Jessica's room. Clay, who had also attended the party, decides to leave after failing to find Hannah. His friend Jeff encourages him to stay and confess his feelings to Hannah, but Clay insists on leaving. Meanwhile, Sherry offers to drive Hannah home, but on the way she hits a stop sign and knocks it over, causing it to fall to the ground. Urges Sherry to call the police, but Sherry, fearing legal repercussions and her father's reaction, abandons Hannah at the scene. Hannah runs to a nearby store to call for help, only to learn that the police have already been informed of the accident. She later discovers that Jeff, Clay's friend, died in a collision at the same intersection. Deeply regretting not having reported the fallen stop sign earlier, after listening to Sherry's tape, Clay confronts her. Sherry agrees to meet him at a specific address, leading him to the elderly man's house involved in the accident with Jeff. It becomes apparent that Sherry has been helping the old man to alleviate her guilt. However, she remains unwilling to reveal the true cause of the accident to Jeff's parents, fearing the consequences. Clay decides to tell Jeff's parents the truth, that Jeff wasn't drunk and the accident was caused by the missing stop sign. After his confession, Clay envisions Hannah, acknowledging her attempts to tell the truth, but her fear of involving others. He leaves Jeff's house and meets Tony in a park, who reveals that the next tape will be about Clay himself. In his tape, Hannah explains why Clay is included. She describes how she attended Jessica's party, hoping to connect with Clay, as she had developed feelings for him. Despite their mutual attraction, a series of misunderstandings and barriers prevented them from confessing their feelings. At the party, Clay and Hannah find a quiet moment together, but when Clay tries to get closer, Hannah, traumatized by previous experiences and rumors, asks him to leave her alone. Deep down, she wishes he had stayed, indicating her conflicted feelings and the missed opportunity between them. Clay listens to Hannah's tape, where she recounts hiding in Jessica's room during Jessica's party and witnessing Bryce's assault on an intoxicated Jessica. Hannah shares that she was paralyzed with shock, unable to intervene or help her friend. Clay is devastated upon hearing Hannah's confession of her feelings for him, realizing he could have saved her if he had stayed with her that night. Meanwhile, Jessica spends a night with Bryce, behaving oddly and seemingly close to him, which upsets Justin. Justin confronts Jessica about Bryce's assault, confirming Hannah's account on the tapes. Jessica, devastated by the revelation, retreats to her home, overwhelmed with emotion. The next day, subpoenas are issued to Hannah's classmates for the lawsuit her parents filed against the school, alleging bullying and negligence. Justin, staying with Alex, rushes to Jessica upon learning of the subpoenas. He confesses his inability to stop Bryce's assault and admits that Bryce helped him and his mother in the past. Jessica, unable to accept Justin's justification for the assault, orders him to leave. Clay begins listening to the 12th tape, detailing Hannah's worst day when she loses her parents' pharmacy deposit. Before he finishes the tape, Tony requests a new new device to listen to the rest and leaves without explaining why. Simultaneously, Hannah's peers, excluding Justin, Jessica, and Bryce, gather to coordinate their testimonies, planning to align their stories to discredit Hannah. Tyler suggests framing Bryce for Hannah's assault as a scapegoat for the group and the lawsuit, hoping this strategy will absolve them of responsibility in the eyes of the court and Hannah's parents. Clay finishes listening to Hannah's tape and learns that after losing her family's pharmacy deposit, she felt she had also lost her parents' trust. Distraught, she wanders until she hears music from a party at Bryce's house. Clay, while listening to the tape, heads to Bryce's house with a hidden recording device in his bag, planning to confront Bryce. At Bryce's house, Clay coaxes Bryce into confessing his rape of Hannah by pretending to buy drugs. Despite being beaten by Bryce, Clay manages to get Bryce to admit that he raped Hannah because she didn't consent to a relationship with him. Satisfied with the confession, Clay returns home late, causing his mother to worry and try to contact him. Meanwhile, an ambulance rushes a young man to the hospital after being shot, and Hannah's classmates begin testifying in court about the bullying and events leading to her suicide. Clay and Tony also prepare to record their testimonies. Before heading to court, Clay plays Bryce's confession to Tony and later meets Jessica. He tells her about the confession and suggests they can now seek justice for both Hannah and Jessica against Bryce. Jessica tells Clay not to destroy the tapes, as Hannah would have wanted their story to be heard. Finally, Clay and Tony go to the courthouse, ready to reveal the truth about Hannah's story and the events that led to her tragic end. The 13th tape reveals Hannah's last day after Bryce's assault. She hoped not to see Bryce again, but was confronted with his presence, unaffected by his actions. The tape focuses on her final hope, talking to Mr. Kevin, the school counselor. Hannah records their conversation, where she expresses feeling lost, friendless, and wanting to stop everything, hinting at suicidal thoughts. Mr. Kevin misunderstands Hannah's distress as regret over a sexual encounter. When she simplifies her explanation of the assault, he suggests it might not be assault, since there were no witnesses and she didn't speak up or resist at the time. Hannah realizes he won't help her and asks if the assaulter could be jailed without her facing him, but Kevin can't promise that. He advises her to try to move on, noting that the assaulter would soon graduate, implying the problem would resolve itself. Hannah is devastated by Kevin's dismissive response. Clay, after listening to this tape, confronts Kevin, accusing him of contributing to Hannah's decision to end her life. He points out that Hannah had a glimmer of hope Kevin would follow her and offer support, but he let her leave, showing no concern for her well-being. After her final encounter with Mr. Kevin, the school counselor, Hannah felt utterly hopeless. She looked at her school one last time, bidding it farewell. She left a box of tapes in front of a friend's door and returned home. Hannah filled her bathtub with water and tragically ended her life. Her mother was the first to discover her lifeless body. Clay, deeply affected by Hannah's story and the roles others played in her demise, confronts Mr. Kevin. He tells him that he and 10 others could have saved Hannah, but they failed to do so. Clay leaves the collection of tapes, including Bryce's confession, with Mr. Kevin, urging him to listen to them and act as he sees fit. Meanwhile, Tony visits Hannah's parents, providing them with a flash drive containing all 14 recordings revealing the secrets of their daughter's life and struggles. During the legal proceedings, Tyler confesses and mentions the existence of the tapes, indicating that Clay was the last person to possess them. As the confessions unfold in court, Justin flees to avoid testifying. Before his escape, he warns Bryce about the tapes, alerting him to the potential consequences if the police get hold of them. Jessica, overwhelmed by the events, finally decides to reveal her ordeal to her father, entrusting him to take action. Mr. Kevin listens to all the tapes, only to receive news that Alex has critically injured himself in a shooting incident. Hannah's parents begin listening to the tapes, finally understanding the full extent of their daughter's suffering. Ultimately, Clay feels a sense of freedom, having fulfilled Hannah's wish to unveil the truth, and the reality of what she endured is finally brought to light.